Hello, friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Breck Roll. All right, so I got a real good night's sleep last night, and I'm feeling a lot better now. So that was probably whatever it was. A lot of you suggested maybe I got dehydrated the other day, and that's possible. I am not entirely sure about that because I've worked harder in hotter temperatures, and you know, always been able to bounce back real fast. But I think it probably just was that I just wasn't getting enough sleep there for a couple days, and I think I'm over that now. So, got a couple simple little projects today I want to do around the house. But tomorrow, I think I want to go empty the remains of the second pod. I really just kind of want to separate myself from the Pods Corporation as soon as possible. So, let's get going. Now, when I moved into this place, one of the first things I noticed is when they replaced the cabinets, they forgot to put handles on all of the cabinets. So that's a simple fix. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take off this one here, take it over to Home Depot, and see if I can find a replacement. Now, the second issue I want to deal with is these electrical outlets in the master bedroom. This isn't really a that's not how it's done moment. This was the appropriate way to do this maybe 500 years ago. But the problem is these switches have worn out and they just don't always work. The switch on the left controls the ceiling fan, and when I woke up this morning, I noticed the ceiling fan wasn't spinning. And it turns out that the switch it's a little flaky. It's just worn out. So, and this one's been a little weird too. See, I just touched that, pushed that one up, and the light went out. So I think I just want to replace both those switches. That's like a $2 piece at Home Depot. So there's no reason not to do that. Now, before I get too much into this project, I think I want to take the faceplate off just to make sure there's nothing funny with those switches. Yep, that's about what I expected to find in there. You always want to check, but sometimes you got to worry about things like the amount of power that's going through here, because if you're going to be powering something that that draws a lot of current, then you need to get a larger switch. But generally, when you're controlling a ceiling fan or lights or something like that, a typical 20 amp switch is going to be enough, and those are cheap. Those are, like I said, a couple bucks a piece, so we'll just replace both those. And just to make sure I get the right part, I took one of the knobs off of the cabinet so I can compare it to what they have at Home Depot. This should be another $2 fix. Now, I know some of you may be asking, why are you paying for this on your own? This is your landlord's responsibility. And that's true, but the truth is they're dealing with a lot of weird situations here, and I kind of feel a little sorry for the manager of this place. She's doing her best to try and keep this place going and dealing with maintenance people that don't really seem to know what they're doing and all that. So if I could spend 20 or 30 minutes doing a simple project like that, and it costs me $6 or $8 to do it, one, it's good filler for the vlog. Two, it's something to help me pass the time. And it helps them also. So, whatever. I'll help them out a little bit as long as they keep dealing with the big things. And by big things, I mean things like this. This is the sliding glass door that goes out into the back of my apartment. For some reason, I don't know exactly why, but they say that when they hooked this thing up, they installed it wrong, or this wasn't the right latch for this door or something like that. And so it doesn't actually close. The only thing that's keeping it locked is this metal bar right here. So I got contacted by one of the maintenance people today, and they have purchased a replacement door and are going to install that today. Like I said, I wouldn't pay for that. That's their responsibility. But if it's a couple bucks, you know what? I'll do that. All right, so I overestimated that price by a fair amount. That's exactly what I need, and it isn't going to be a couple bucks a piece. It's going to be 68 cents a piece. Yeah, that's worth it to get it fixed and not have to wait for the maintenance people to do it. And I found a knob for the cabinet too. It isn't exactly the same thing, but it's so close that no one will notice. All right, got out of there for less than $5. Can't complain about that. A 10-minute round trip to Home Depot, $3 at the cash register, and about 30 seconds to install, and we're good to go. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take these switches off. Now, a lot of times, if you don't know what you're doing, it's probably a better idea to disconnect the power at the breaker. But Generally with electricity, if you know what you're doing, you can avoid problems just by knowing what not to touch. See if we can get this even off here. They painted in all the screw holes. So this is the switch that goes to the fan. There's usually a screw at the top and one at the bottom that control the breakout box. Okay, so what I'm going to do, sometimes, on the switches that I have here, there's actually a little screw that you can screw into. But some of these also have like these one-way attachment things where you can just literally cram the wire into the connector and it just locks in place. That's one of these. So the good thing about them is that they don't come loose very often. The bad thing is if you replace them, you got to cut them out. So cut. Pull switches out. Now that also means I'm going to have to strip the wires here. Got my handy dandy wire stripper here. Now at this point, when you have the two bare pieces of wire here, you don't want to touch both of those at once. You'll get a big surprise if you do. So do yourself a favor, don't do that. Now you can touch one, you can touch the other, but if you touch both of them, you close the circuit and you'll get shocked. Also, you gotta be careful doing this. You don't want to be touching the metal box in there or standing in water or touching anything metal, because electricity will find the shortest path to ground. And if that path is through you, you turn into an electrical circuit. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna kind of use my screwdriver here to bend that to make it curve correctly. And then all I have to do is find the right screwdriver here. And open up the screws a little bit here. Clamp it down really good. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. And actually, hang on a second. I am going to go get a pair of needle nose pliers. Right tool for the right job, right? All right, so I've got my needle nose pliers here. This will work a little better than the screwdriver. The wire's a little heavy gauge, so it's easier to do it that way. Just make a nice little loop in there like I did. Got to open this one up a little bit so you can get it in there. There we go, got it locked in. Now at this point you can actually test the switch, make sure it works, and it does. I turned it on, the fan starts up right away, so we're good on that one. Now sometimes there's a, I don't know if you can see it, we'll look at this one here. There's also sometimes a green screw on this, and the green screw is if you have a third line running in there and you need to have, and that's your ground line. There is none of that in here, so we're only using the two. Get it in there, get it screwed back into place. Same thing on this one. Now you kind of want to leave these things a little bit loose initially until you both get them into place, because what you're going to want to do is when you put the faceplate back on, you got to make sure the faceplate fits in there correctly. And right now it doesn't. They're not spaced correctly. So we'll do that. So I'm going to go do the other one, and then we'll come back in a minute and talk about this. All right, so I got both the switches installed. They're actually very simple to do. You can just see the wire running in there. Now at this point, I've got them a little bit loose in here, so I can get the faceplate on and make sure the faceplate fits over both the holes. And that looks pretty good right about there. So I'm going to tighten those down. One of the things I'm having to deal with here is a lot of these boxes in here, these metal boxes that you put the outlets and things like that. Normally what you're supposed to do is attach them inside the wall to the stud. I found that a lot of these boxes in here are just floating loose in here. So as I'm screwing them down, it isn't securing very well because I keep pulling the box out rather than securing everything. But then we're good there. We'll put the screws back on, and I need 2 hands for that, so bear with me for a second. All right, so I got the screws just kind of hand seated in there right now. Gonna tighten them down. And boom, that's how it's done. So you guys thought I was joking when I talked about how old those things were. I may have been being generous. I think the only future they have now is in the trash can. So all in all, that took about 5 minutes to do. You know, it's how simple that is if you know what you're doing. In this apartment, they tend to stick with what works until it doesn't work, and maybe even long after it stops working before they do repairs. But like I said, 68 cents a piece for the switches, about 5 minutes for the work, and I'm good to go now. So a lot of people in the comment sections on my YouTube channel tell me that they really like the do-it-yourself project. So this one was for you. It was a real simple project. Took me, 10-15 minutes of work. Cost me less than $5, and now we're in better shape with that switch. I really depend especially on that ceiling fan at night because it gets a little hot and stuffy in here, and if you keep the air moving, it keeps it way more comfortable. Fortunately, it was a relatively cool day yesterday, so I didn't even realize that the fan wasn't working until I woke up and saw it wasn't spinning. And I was thinking to myself, oh, I hope that doesn't mean that the fan itself broke. And I started thinking, wait, I was messing around with the light switches yesterday. Maybe I bumped it and that was what the problem was, and it turned out that's what it was. So those switches just need to be replaced, and that's just what you got to do sometimes. You can't just let the 50-year-old or 100-year-old or 200-year-old switches, or however old those things were, go forever. Eventually they go past their life expectancy and have to be replaced. And if it's 68 cents to do it, there's no reason not to, right? Anyway, I do want to make one announcement. I've been doing a series of live streams lately, and I am going to plan to do one on Saturday. Now this one I'm really gearing towards some of my fans in the UK, because so far a lot of the live streams I've done have been geared towards people who are here in North America. I do them about 7 o'clock at night, which means it's 5 o'clock on the West Coast, 8 o'clock on the East Coast, and it's kind of within the time where people would watch. But if I do it at 7 o'clock here, that means it's like midnight or 1 o'clock or 2 in the morning for our European friends. So I'm going to try and do a live stream on Saturday at noon local time, which should be early evening in Europe. What I'll do is I'll put a diagram up on the screen here that'll help you calculate what time it will be. So I hope you tune in. Like I said, all my North American friends, you can check in too. It's just going to be earlier in the day than my previous streams have been. All right, so here's my handy dandy live stream map for Europe. Basically, find your country, determine what color it is, and look at the same color box below, and that is the time on Saturday night where I am planning to do a live stream. If you're unsure of it, I'm going to plan on starting it at 12 noon Texas time. And if I start at 12 noon Texas time, then it's going to be live at 6 p.m. in the UK, 7 p.m. for, from France to Poland, and so on and so forth as you move across the country. So, like I said, this isn't just for Europe. Anyone who wants to check in and from anywhere in the world is free to do so. I just didn't think it was fair that Europe kept having to get up at 2 or 3 in the morning to participate in my live stream. So this one's for you. That's all I really have for today. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you next time on Escaping the Mouse. Good night.